Today I'm going to be talking about why I'm glad that my parents got a divorce. Now, this is somewhat of a controversial subject and a touchy subject for many people, as many people's parents are divorced. So, I'll just start off with the story and then I'll explain why exactly I'm glad that my parents ended up getting divorced. And just real quick, for the sponsorship money, you know? No, I'm kidding. There's no sponsorship. But hey, I really like Red Bull, so if Red Bull wants to sponsor me, or Monster, or coffee company, I mean, perhaps we could arrange something. That's the good stuff. Okay, so my parents ended up separating when I was about 7 years old, I believe. That's when they first separated. And it wasn't until I was about 12 years old when they finally got a divorce, or the divorce was finalized. And yeah, I just remember as a kid, my parents, I don't think they got along all that well together. I don't even remember doing a whole lot as a family. I should note that I'm an only child. I don't remember my mom or my dad or I doing all that much together, like the three of us. Um, Maybe it's because I was so young, but yeah, I get the impression that they just never got along that well, and apparently they even had relationship conflicts and stuff before I was even born. They were together for a few years or something before I was born. I'm not entirely sure, but I know they got married around the time that I was conceived, so yeah. But yeah, I do remember doing stuff with my dad and my mom when I was pretty young, but I don't remember um, doing much with the three of us together, so yeah. But I do remember growing up, my parents did argue quite a bit, and as I said, yeah, they just didn't get along. They were arguing. I think they had different temperaments, different values, relationship conflicts. Just arguments a lot of the time. Pretty bad arguments. Like I remember a lot of the arguments, or a lot of the memories that I have from my childhood in those days and those times were them arguing and getting into yelling matches. And yeah, I don't want to get into that much detail about all of it. And, I think that's just between me and myself for the most part. But yeah, it was not good. It was not a good thing. And speaking of which, actually, this video is quite topical now that I mention it, because it's Valentine's Day and I'm wearing red. So, what are the odds of that? Anyways, um, yeah, my parents always arguing and fighting, and just at some point, I think my mom gave my dad an ultimatum, and basically he just left. And yeah, he just up and left, and I think he moved out not too long after my mom gave him that choice, and yeah, he was just gone. There's some dispute about what exactly happened in those last days when he was living with me and my mom. She says it went one way. I remember things a bit differently, but regardless, yeah, they ended up separating, and they were separated for several years until I was about 12 years old, and that's when they got a divorce. And I think my mom had primary custody or full custody, because I always just lived with my mom. And yeah, it was just my mom and me, and yeah, I'm glad that it came to an end. That it can be traumatizing for a lot of people, but this is why I think that it was a good thing. And if your parents are getting divorced, um, or they have been divorced and maybe it traumatized you, or you have a bad outlook about it, or maybe you have kids and you're thinking about getting divorced, and I can give you some perspective as now in my 20s as an adult whose parents got divorced when I was 12 and separated when I was 7, that I can say this, that I think it was the best decision. I think it was the best thing for me, and in some respect, I think it should have happened sooner. I know that may seem kind of bleak in a way, or cold or disconnected in a certain sense, but I'll explain why. And that's because, think about it like this: would you rather subject your children to them witnessing a relationship where their parents don't even love each other at all, and they're just together, for the kids, and because they think that's for the greater good? I don't think that's a good thing, and I'm glad, and I'm very lucky, or should I say, like, blessed in a way, or I don't really believe in that, but I'll say I'm lucky and fortunate enough. That's the term I would use. Fortunate enough that my mother didn't date anybody, or I didn't have a stepdad or anything like that after my dad had left. I'm pretty glad about that, and I know, those kinds of relationships can be very difficult for some people. Some people, they have no issues with their like step parents and step siblings and blah blah blah. But I've always liked being an only child. That's just how it is. I'm even an only grandchild. My maternal grandparents' only child, or only grandchild, sorry. And yeah, that's just how I roll. That's just how I do things. I guess I'm just built different. I have a different type of mind where I'm just like, I'm a lone wolf. I'm a solo rider like that. You know what I mean? So that's how I go about things. That's how I do things in life. And yeah, so I'm glad that my mom made that choice, and she had another marriage before my dad that didn't end up so well either. And so I think that just left her with the mindset that, yeah, maybe this marriage thing is not for me. And I'm not saying that they were her fault or anything like that. I don't want to get into my family's personal life. This video is about me and my response to what happened, this event in my life with my parents. But I will say that I am grateful that she made that decision and I didn't have to deal with any of that. So maybe for you it's different, but I'm just saying, in my situation where I didn't have to deal with any of the, like, stepdad or anything like that, then this is where I'm coming from. But yeah, I'm glad that all the arguments, all the yelling and the bickering, and having knowing that your parents don't love each other and they're just staying together for you, that can cause a lot of emotional turmoil, especially if you're young, and be weighing on your mind like, oh my gosh, my parents, they hate each other and they don't even want to be together and they don't even love each other and they're just staying together for me. It's like, it puts a lot of weight on you, you know what I mean? And it puts a lot of stress on you if you figure that out, or if you're told that at an older age, as opposed to your parents just being like emotionally mature and just being like, yep, unfortunately that's just how it is. We don't like each other anymore. We have too many differences. Whatever the list may be. People get divorced for all kinds of reasons. But yeah, your parents get divorced and they just tell you, yeah, that's just how things are, and they show you the appropriate way to deal with that, instead of just like, trying to put a band-aid over the problem, just like, oh, we're gonna stick together for the kids. I mean, yeah, it's actually, I think, more harmful if you just if you stick together when you don't want to, for the kids or for the kid or whatever. So yeah, I was kind of glad. Well, not at the time. I wasn't glad, but when I finally made that connection and that realization, I was glad that that's what happened. I think before I thought about it a lot differently, and maybe you are too, and maybe that's why you looked up this video, because there's a stigma with being raised by a single parent, and people, especially if you're raised by a single mother, and people are going to be like, oh, you're going to grow up to be a thug or a loser, and they throw around terms like fatherless and blah blah blah, like you're going to be a failure in life. I mean, really, it's no different than making fun of an orphan. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you don't have any parents, or parents gave you up, blah blah blah. Like, I mean, it's just like, it's like, okay, I mean, whatever. I mean, at least you could say, I mean, yeah, they're just probably projecting their own insecurities about life, and whether somebody has a dad or not. I mean, there's tons of successful people that were raised by single parents. I mean, look at Kanye. I mean, is he like a billionaire or something? I know he crashed out and everything, and ironically enough that he has bipolar, and so do I. But um, yeah, I mean, he's a very successful individual. One of the greatest music artists of all time. One of the most critically acclaimed, and he has tons of fans still, even after all that craziness and crashing out. Unfortunately, which I can relate to because I have bipolar, and a lot of other people they probably won't understand. But yeah, I don't mean to derail this about Kanye, but anyways, there's other successful people as well who've had divorced parents, so don't let it other people shame you and make you feel bad for it. I mean, it just is what it is. It's out of your control, and you are still in control of who you can become and what you want to do with your life. It doesn't have to define you like, oh, I'm destined to be a failure because my parents got divorced and it was traumatic for me, so I'm just going to dwell on it forever and not get past it. Like, if you're traumatized by it, you have to find a way through it, and you got to process that. And that's part of why I'm making this video too, because you can look at things in a different perspective and say, hey, you know what, actually it could have been a lot worse and a lot more traumatizing if my parents stayed together. And I actually have a story about this, what happens when um, people don't let go, and when things actually go way south. I'm not going to name any names here, but there's someone who's close to me that I've known for a long time, and this was back on Christmas Day of 2024. I was calling with them, and they were telling me that their parents were arguing on Christmas Day. And by the way, I think their parents divorced or separated a long time ago, like when they were a kid. But they keep getting back together and moving in back together, and then keep leaving and all that like craziness. So basically, they showed me when I was on the video call with them, their parents arguing on Christmas Day. And they tried to stop the argument and just say, hey, it's Christmas, let's just not argue, where's the Christmas spirit and everything. And then their parents just kept arguing, and they just ignored them, and it was like they didn't even say anything at all. They were so enveloped in the arguments about whatever, and they're just arguing in front of their kids on Christmas Day, and it's just a disaster. And they're a little bit younger than me, so they were actually like I think 18 at the time when that happened back in 2024 on Christmas Day. So yeah, imagine that, going through that your entire life on what's considered one of the biggest holidays of the entire year, or the biggest holiday of the entire year in the United States and our culture as a nation. And your parents are screaming at each other, yelling about stuff and arguing on all throughout the day, So yeah, would you rather be dealing with that, or would you rather just your parents be mature and just say, yep, you know what, we got to separate, this is how it is, we're going to have conflict, it doesn't even have to be conflict, just not loving each other. I mean, they have rights as individuals too to just say, you know what, this relationship isn't working out. And if you're in that situation, you owe it to yourself and to your family to not stick around in that situation. And I think it's a good display of what you should do in a situation like that. If the relationship is bad, it's just like, yeah, don't stay around, don't you gotta do what you have to do, basically, for your own mental health, for the mental health of other people. So otherwise you're just going to create a toxic environment. And even though there may not be any conflicts at the time, or you try to bury the conflicts, chances are it's just going to come to the top again. So if you just can't resolve things, I mean, if it's something that can possibly be resolved and be moved on, and I think my parents, they tried to resolve the conflicts and everything while they could have, but it just was not reconcilable. And yeah, that's when my parents split up and later got a divorce. So yeah, and I look back and sometimes you think about one of the parents as well could be more toxic. And if you actually understand that one of your parents, or if you're in that relationship that, one of your partner or whatever is toxic and is, I mean, that's gonna be put on to the kids as well. Like if you don't even like the partner you're with, then why are you subjecting your kids to them as well? You know what I mean? And you might think, oh well, it's their parent, but I mean, yeah, you got to do what you got to do sometimes to protect your kids and whatnot. So, I mean, me personally, that's why I think that, well, that's a whole nother topic in and of itself, but I highly, highly doubt that I will ever have kids. I really don't plan on it at all. Um, Kind of against the whole idea, at least personally. But that's a whole nother topic for another time. So if you're someone whose parents are going through divorce, or your parents got divorced and you're stressed out about it and you're traumatized, I mean, just think about if they stuck together, what could have happened? What would have happened? It could have been worse. I mean, you could be fantasizing about, oh well, they could have, you know, reconciled the relationship and they could have done this and that. And I mean, it's like, okay, and you could have been born into a millionaire or a billionaire family and been super rich, and you could have been born in perfect health. Like I could sit here and think, oh, I could have been born without bipolar and all these mental health conditions and OCD and all that. I mean, it's not beneficial to your mental health to just keep thinking about things that are outside of your control. It's just going to make you more depressed. Um, so yeah, if you're thinking about that, like maybe I have in the past, then you can just think, well, you know what? The way things ended up going, the way that it wasn't that bad, and it was probably for the best. And like I said, maybe you'll come to the conclusion that I have, that it should have happened even sooner. And like if you're subjected to seeing your parents scream at each other and having all those arguments, especially at the young ages, like the ages that I was like, 7 or less, then you might think that, well, maybe they should have gotten divorced even sooner and separated sooner. But yeah, that can be a lot. It's a heavy subject, but let me know, what do you guys think about it? Are your parents divorced? What do you think about it? Are you still, messed up from it? Are you traumatized about it? Are you Because I think a lot of people, they don't take it seriously. It's becoming more ubiquitous in society, and people just don't see it as a big deal. But if like murder were just very ubiquitous in society, would it just not be a big deal anymore? I'd say that's an even bigger deal if it's more ubiquitous, and it doesn't take away from the fact that it's still a traumatizing thing. So just because a lot of people go through it doesn't mean that it isn't bad. And a lot of people talk about, you know, physical or psychological abuse, but your parents getting divorced can be a genuinely traumatic thing for some people to experience, and I feel like a lot of people don't take it seriously. But like I said, you can also look at it from a positive perspective and change your perspective on things and not dwell on it, and then move on. I don't want this video to become too long now, but yeah, let me know your thoughts. Do you agree? Do you disagree? But yeah, me personally, I think that it was a good decision that my parents ended up separating and getting divorced, and I just honestly wish it had happened sooner. And yeah, like I said, I'm also glad that my parents, or my mom, she didn't. I don't. I'm just glad that I don't have a stepdad or anything like that, and just have a quiet and peaceful life. And I mean, some people, they do get a stepdad, and then they don't mind it, or they like them, and that's fine. But as for me, I'm not about that, and my mom didn't want that for me growing up either. And I've seen it end pretty badly in some respects for some of my other family members that like cousins and stuff that have had stepdads. I mean, yeah, didn't um, ended up driving with them and stuff. So anyways, hope you all enjoyed the video. Peace out. See ya.